I had so much fun making the last episode, I'm going to make episode 6 right now. So this is episode 6 of How to Jazz Cello. I realized I haven't made a video on walking bass lines yet, so I'm going to talk about that for a sec. Hopefully this is shorter and you can just get straight to practicing. In the last video, I talked about an exercise to memorize chord changes. One thing that might help is just memorizing the roots notes of every chord and letting your own intuition fill in the chord quality and just using the bass notes of each chord as your pathway to memorize the harmony. This is also a really beneficial exercise to practice walking bass lines over, or just bass lines in general. There's two types of bass lines, actually, that you should probably know if you want to jam with people in a jazz context and you want to play the role of a bass player. Two things you should know if you're playing swinging music, not bossa nova, not Latin, not funk, swing. Number one is a two feel. Number two is quarter notes. Let's take the tune There Will Never Be Another You. Pulling this up right now. This is so improvised. I'm improvising this video, just like you should improvise your jazz solo. We're going to take this tune, There Will Never Be Another You, and I'm going to first demonstrate what a two feel sounds like, and then I'm going to demonstrate what a walking bass line sounds like. And I'm going to do this with drums. Let's see if this works. Let's do like 160. Cool. All right, ready? Two feel. Walking. That's what a walking bass line sounds like. Let me break down what I did. Two feel is half notes. And it's generally John Patitucci, the great bass player, jazz bass player, upright bass, electric bass, all the basses. He says it's very common. It's good to like play a two feel bass line for the head of a tune and then go into walking for the solo section, which I think is good. It's good to know that. So I would recommend knowing both. I also think a two feel gives you enough time when you're just kind of learning how to walk a bass line to practice that kind of rhythmic groundedness that I was attempting to demonstrate to the best of my ability, and am by no means an expert, but I'm just trying to show you what to practice, and then you guys will probably do it way better than me. Two feel with half notes generally revolves around roots and fifths. So you can make this super academic if you want. You can go chord by chord and be like, I'm going to only play root, fifth for the entirety of the song. What can make it interesting is if you practice doing roots and fifths, but switching the order. So sometimes starting with a fifth and then going to the root on certain chords to voice lead between the chords, basically keeping intervals as small as possible when they can. Now, it's hard to keep intervals small when you're going between roots and fifths, because that's a super big interval. But sometimes there are ways to pivot from chord to chord by switching the order. I'll give you an example for the first 4 bars of There Will Never Be Another You. Right? Now let's think about this. We have 2 bars of E flat, right? So I could go root, 5th, but one useful thing that I like is sometimes going root, 5th, root, octave up, which counts, by the way, and then back down to the 5th. Not only does it sound super cool and dope, but also it technically is a smaller interval. That B flat to that E flat is a perfect 4th, not a perfect 5th. And going back down from the B flat down to the E flat is a perfect 5th. So, like I said, I wanted to use a smaller interval. There we go. 4th, 4th, right? And then from here we have a D minor 7 flat 5. So our root and 5th is D and A flat. Right? So I might go for the first 2 bars and then, right? I might go like that. So then we have just root 5th, root 5th, root 5th, root 5th. Let's do it again. Root 5th, root 5th, root 5th. Right? We could also go root 5th, root. So that would be an example of where I changed the octave of the root in order to minimize intervals. So I would practice going through with the 2 feel with this, just practicing roots and 5ths, right? Now, of course, there are exceptions. You don't have to do root and 5th every time, but you should really practice root and 5th every time for a while and get really good at it before you move on to other things. So I'm not even going to give you advice for anything else. Just get really good at doing roots and 5ths, but changing the octave and changing the inversion of those intervals. And then when you can make that really sound and feel good, I think you'll be at a point where you can start to use your ear to add in 10% variation at most. Now, as someone who plays with bass players, don't go too crazy when you're doing like this thing, like especially on the first chorus, like keep it simple, stupid. The next step is to turn half notes, to turn wine into water, to turn water into wine, to turn half notes into quarter notes. So we're just simply filling in the gaps between the roots and the 5ths. Right? An easy way to do this is with thirds, right? Now you might be saying like, Chris, that's just a major 7 arpeggio. Why are you playing a major 7 arpeggio as a bass line? And I would say, you're completely right. You shouldn't be playing arpeggios as a bass player. Now, let me back up. As a walking bass player with quarter notes, it's generally better to revolve around more stepwise scalular motion, drawing from steps, meaning seconds, major or minor seconds, stepwise intervals. Now, generally, whatever chord you are playing in is either major-ish or minor-ish. There are also chords that are dominant-ish, which is just major, but with a flat 7. And then there are chords that are like minor-ish, but with a more diminished E sound, meaning flat 5. You can rewind that if you want. But what I would encourage you to do, first, out of time, practice just playing a scale in the key of whatever chord you're in. Let's start with E flat major 7, E flat major, D minor 7 flat 5. Well, we can just play a D minor scale, but because it's flat 5, I'm going to make the 5th flat. Sorry. actually play that scale in context, but I'm going to play that for now, right? Right? Next is G7, which means it's G major with flat 7. Then we have C minor 7, C minor. Then we have B flat minor, so B flat minor. I think that was B flat minor. Might have been B flat to right. Sue me. E flat major with flat 7. So I just went through and I figured out a scale that might work over the first 8 bars, right? I'm going to practice starting on a note, playing quarter notes, moving stepwise through these scales, and trying to adjust at whatever point I am in that scale to the new scale. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to start on E flat major. I have 8 quarter notes of E flat major before I switch to playing in the middle of that scale 4 quarter notes of D minor with a flat 5. And then I have 4 quarter notes of G7, which is 4 quarter notes of G major with a flat 7, right? So let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, we need to continue the scale in D minor, flat 5. All right, we need to continue the scale now in G major with a flat 7. All right, and now we need to continue it in C minor. We're getting really high, so I'm going to come back down. Now we have 4 beats of B flat minor, so I'm going to continue this scale in B flat minor. And then I'm going to continue the scale in E flat major from here with a flat 7. Right? I'm going to try to do this in time now. Okay, so what I just did is I played the first 8 bars of There Will Never Be Another You, playing just a scale up and down, but changing accidentals to appropriately match the scales that might go with each chord as I play it. It's just an exercise. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about trying to math it out. Just try to do that. And if it really doesn't make sense, then yell at me in the comments and I will make a new video breaking it down better. I know this is not great teaching. Kind of. It's late. So that was 8 bars, which means there's 32 quarter notes. 8 times 4 is 32. So there's 32 quarter notes that you have to play. Now, it becomes really interesting when you don't start on the same note, because I'm only using stepwise motion, if you remember correctly. I'm only using seconds. So it becomes really interesting when you start on new notes. So I'm going to start on C, but I'm still playing E flat major. I'm just starting at a different point in the scale. I'm calling that beat 1. I'm going to do this with the drums. So I'm going to do the same thing I just did, but starting on C. E flat major. Totally messed up. Let's do it one more time. Again. Okay, so that was what that chord progression, that bass line sounded like when I started on a C. Let's do it one more time, and I'm going to start on a B flat. But we're still playing E flat major. Okay, I added one cheater note at the very end if you noticed it, but hopefully this makes some amount of sense. It's just an exercise where you play a scale, meaning sequential letters of the alphabet, notes. You play an A, you play a B, you play a C, you play a D, you play an E, you play an F, you play a G, then you go back to A, then you play B, C, D, D. with different accidentals depending on the key you're in. There's always going to be a type of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, though, at some point. That's what a scale is. And you decide a point where you're going to start at the bottom. You decide a point at the top where you're going to switch and go back. And that's your practice. That's how you practice walking bass lines with good voice leaning through the chords. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to like play the root on every single chord if you really know your scales like that. But what can be helpful is keeping this concept in mind, practicing it, getting really good at it. And then when you actually go to walk a bass line, do that, but like 50 to 60 to 70% of the time, I would say, just realign yourself on the root of each chord as you play it. And you'll still have the freedom to walk elsewhere and take it on a journey, but you will kind of reground yourself on the root every single chord. And you really provide this sense of stability and structure for the person you're playing with. It's not fun when the bass player is like only playing these like rootless walking lines that are kind of like meandering throughout the harmony really ambiguously. So anyways, hopefully that makes sense. This is probably the least clear I've been in any video that I've uploaded to this channel, but I just want to make a bunch of videos. So if I have to go and talk about this again, I will. And I will talk about different concepts, but hopefully this gives you ideas to practice today. Now, today we looked at the tune There Will Never Be Another You. You can find the chart on iReal Pro. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.